Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got
it! We are here to Field Rockets News. This Rockets Field podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Lashard Binkley. You can always find me on Twitter at Binkley Hoops or at the Dream Shake or SB Nation for all my written work. I'm also a credential writer. I've been covering the Rockets for the last 3 years now. And also I've been covering the Rio Grande Valley Vipers for the last 3 seasons. So definitely appreciate all the support over the years. And before we get too far into this, I want to talk about our sponsor, Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And of course, today we are talking about the huge breaking news. The Houston Rockets, who were thought to have probably the number 9 pick in this upcoming draft, went all the way up to number 3 as the names started dropping off the list, and the Rockets were still not one called. They were guaranteed to be in the top 4, and they fell out to they eventually were named at number 3, just shocking most Rockets fans. I'm sure even the Rockets front office. Ime Udoka was the one that was actually there, and as usual, he didn't show a lot of emotion, but I'm sure inside he was definitely doing flips, because this gives the Rockets options. They don't necessarily have to pick anybody at this number 3 pick. They don't necessarily have to trade it. That gives them options that they necessarily didn't have at the number 9 pick. So on today's show, I want to talk about, give my opinion on whether they should keep that pick, or maybe they should go ahead and trade that pick because they are kind of in win now mode. And before I actually get into that, I want you to listen to something that Tillman Fertitta said. I don't know if a lot of people were paying attention to it at the time, but during the opening, or at least the unveiling of the facility that they have opening up this summer, the new big fancy training practice facility that the Rockets have opening up this summer, Tillman was kind of talking about the state of the team, and he mentioned that he was talking to M.A. M.A. said that he doesn't necessarily need any more young players. They have the core 6 players that we already know about, and he feels like he can develop those players and they can become all-stars, but he doesn't really need any more young players to develop. And that went into part of the reason why they got rid of a KJ Martin, a Uzma Garuba, a Ty Washington. They felt that like they didn't need any more young guys to bring in when they were trying to win now. And that's going to be even more the case this next coming season. Yes, it was fine to go 41-41, but just being better and, let's say, going 42-40 and still not making the playoffs, that's not going to be good enough for Tillman Fertitta, for Rafael Stone, for anybody in the Rockets organization next season. So for me, that kind of goes into the decision on what they're going to do with this pick. So I want you to listen to this audio or this video, watch this video, and then kind of form your own opinion on it.
A coach that had the foresight to say, I've got 6 guys that I can really develop. That all 6 of these people have a chance to be an all-star in this league. And I don't need any other young projects. And where the players that we released, that some of the media said, why did you draft these guys and then you released them 3 years later or 2 years later, is because it's time to start winning. We don't want to be one of those teams that it took them 8 years. Remember, the Lakers didn't make the playoffs, I think, for 7 or 8 years until they got LeBron. Phoenix was out for 10 or 12 years. Sacramento, 14 years. Okay, I personally couldn't do more than 2 or 3 or 4 years, okay, that we weren't going to have competitive basketball.
So as you see there, like I said, Tillman said that MA doesn't necessarily want any more young players. I don't know if that had something to do with the players they already had, if that necessarily has anything to do with the future, but he definitely said it. And MA doesn't seem like the type of coach that necessarily wants a bunch of young guys that he has to continue to try to develop. So that's something to keep in mind when the Rockets, when you think about what the decision the Rockets are going to make coming up. And for me, that kind of goes into my opinion as well, as I don't think the Rockets should try to trade or actually try to sign and bring somebody else or bringing another young guy in during the draft. You already have the 6 young guys. Tari Eason didn't even play last season, and you still have trouble getting minutes for the guys that you did have that were playing. So now you bring Tari Eason back, and let's say you bring in another young guy that's going to have to develop. I don't care how great he is, unless he's like a once in a lifetime player like a Victor Wembanyama or LeBron James. It's going to be hard for him to make that huge impact that first season. That's something the Rock is going to need. And need to be able to take that next step. You're in the very tough Western Conference. As you see, you finished 41-41 and still didn't even make the play-in game. 41-41 would have got you the 8th or 9th seed in the Eastern Conference. But the Western Conference is just going to get even more tougher next season because now San Antonio is going to get another lottery pick, and they're going to get better. So you're not even talking about all the teams that were already ahead of you that you're going to have to try to leapfrog at least 2 or 3 of those teams. So to me, it doesn't necessarily have to be a superstar level player. It does have to be a player that can make an impact now. Now, let's say they do try to keep that pick and they do go into this draft thinking, okay, we're going to draft somebody. Then there are some interesting names. I think the consensus number 1 player is Alex Sarr out of Australia, the 7-footer. I think that most mock drafts have him at number 1. There's some interesting names like Rob Dillingham. You also have the center out of UConn. You also have Nikola Topic, the point guard, the 6'6" point guard of Serbia. But I don't think the Rockets are really going to be looking for any point guards or any center, especially at a number 3 overall pick. And like I said, Alex Sarr will be going at the number 1 pick, so he'll be going for the Rockets even draft. The only person I find interesting that the Rockets may consider is Matas Bazelis out of Lithuania, who played for the G League Ignite, the defunct team, G League Ignite last season. He is a 6'10", 6'11" power forward who can create his own shot and create shots for others, something the Rockets don't have. That's the only thing that kind of makes this interesting because he's the type of player the Rockets don't currently have on their team. A forward, small forward or power forward that can create their own shot and get other players involved. So that's an interesting name to kind of keep an eye out for. Most mock drafts have him in the top 5. As a couple have him a little bit outside of the top 5, but it's kind of hard to say right now because a lot of the scouting is really just kicking into high gear now. But most mock drafts have him in the top 5. So that's a name to kind of keep in mind if the Rockets do decide to keep the pick. But if you're asking me, like I said, you're going to have players that are going to become available that you may not even know about right now that may be demanding a trade, or a team that's looking to rebuild and they would like that high draft pick to start that rebuild. You may have a team in the playoffs right now that thinks they should have went further, end up losing, and now some of their players are becoming available. So you really never know, and now you have that option. Maybe you have to get rid of one of your players as far as also bringing trading out that number 3 pick to be able to facilitate a trade. That may be a possibility, but you wouldn't have had that option at number 9. Number 9, yeah, some teams would have traded for it, but more than likely you wouldn't even get too much in return for a number 9 pick, especially in this draft, which a lot of people consider it a weaker draft. Even though I hate saying weaker draft because you never really know until 2 or 3 years down the road. But just looking at the players now, there's nobody that just jumps out and be like, okay, I have to draft that player. It's not like a Victor Wembanyama where if the Rockets were able to draft Victor Wembanyama, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter who they had on their team. They were going to draft Victor Wembanyama. None of these guys are that type of player. There's no player that they feel like they would have to draft. So that's why I think that they may not admit it now, but just listen to that soundbite we did earlier and knowing the Rockets want to win now and knowing that MA doesn't necessarily want to be bringing in any more young players, you factor all that stuff in, and I'm just, kind of reading the writing on the wall. To me, that sounds like they're going to be trading that number 3 pick. Now, maybe somebody just wows them in workouts and they decide to keep that pick. But if I was a betting man and I had to bet on whether they draft a player at number 3 or they trade out and try to make their team better now, I would have to go with them trading waiting that pick. To me, that makes the most sense. That kind of lines up with the type of coach that MA is, and that, Rafael, yes, he just got the extension, but they're trying to win now. Tillman's tired of losing, tired of being out of the playoffs. He's not going to be fine with them just going 42-40 and finishing the 11th place again. They are at the point now where they have to get better. The West is just too strong to stay where you are. So to me, you go out there, you try to find a player that's going to help you win now at whatever position it is. Because right now the Rockets, even though they have depth at the center position, they have some depth at the point guard position. If you can find a player that's going to help you win now, you bring that player in and you go ahead and pull that trigger and make that trade. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this. I mean, this opens up so many possibilities now the Rockets are able to jump up 6 spots into that number 3. And whatever you feel about James Harden, at the end of the day, that James Harden trade is the exact reason why they have that number 3 overall pick right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Again, I appreciate the support. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think the Rockets should do? Should they keep their pick? Should they trade it? If they keep the pick, who do you think they should be trying to go after in the draft? Do you think they maybe should even try to move up even further in the draft, maybe to the number 1 spot? Let me know down in the comments what you think. Again, we appreciate our sponsor, Bet Online. And again, we appreciate your support. We appreciate you hitting that like button and hitting the subscribe. That always helps us with the algorithm, and continue to support us. We'll continue to bring you any news that breaks throughout the off season. And like I said, we appreciate everybody that comes by every single episode. And as usual, make sure you check out the next episode of the Rocket Fuel Podcast.